Welcome to the Venue RX podcast, where we provide a prescription of tips, tools, hacks, and interviews to improve your wedding venue. If you are looking to start, improve, or maximize your wedding venue, this is the place for you. Make sure to subscribe and follow along wherever you listen to podcasts as we delve into the wild world of weddings. We hope you get a lot of value from this episode, and now we'd like to introduce our hosts, Tim Wirik and Jonathan Aymin.
All right, everyone. Good morning and welcome to episode number 3 of the Venue RX podcast. I am your host, Jonathan Aymin. I am joined by my very handsome co-host,
Thank you,
Tim Wirik.
How are you today? So much for that. I appreciate it.
The hair's looking good
today.
You
as well, looking fantastic today. For all of you who are just listening, you need to check us out on YouTube.
I know, clearly you're missing a lot. I mean, there's a whole dimension here that you're missing. And I guess that's the point with podcasts, right? Yeah. We are excited to bring you this episode today. We're going to be talking about something that I think is especially relevant in today's environment with the pandemic and just the massive shift and change in the industry that's happened. Today, we are going to be discussing the very important topic of different revenue streams for your business, and specifically as this relates to wedding venues. Now, if you are another wedding vendor of any sort, whether that's a photographer, a florist, whether you do hair and makeup, whether you are a videographer, this is an important conversation and definitely something that you need to consider because, historically, we've seen every 8, 10, 12 years, there's some sort of economic reset. And so our goal today is to challenge this topic a little bit. Should you add revenue streams, and just really discuss some of the revenue streams that we've seen work well to add revenue to your business. So
I love the way you said that. We're going to challenge it, but I think this is going to be fun. This is going to be a good one.
Yeah, This is going to be great. So Tim, of course, I have to ask, do we have any housekeeping today?
Well, I just touched on one. I definitely think, YouTube is where it's at. We would love to see the response and engagement on there, but follow us on Instagram. Instagram. We're going to be dropping tips and tricks and all sorts of fun stuff on there. And it's a good way just to check in with us and get some highlights from the other episodes. So
yeah, we have little sound bites coming out. That's a great thing. I appreciate you mentioning that. If you go follow us on Instagram, the Venue RX, like the venue prescription. Tim and I are moonlighting as doctors during this whole thing. We're pulling those degrees we didn't get, all that schooling that we didn't do at medical school, but we are your venue doctors today. So go check us out, the Venue RX on Instagram, and send us a DM, shoot us a comment. We would love your suggestions for guests to have on. And that was my bit of housekeeping today. If you have a suggestion for a guest, you're listening to this right now and you know someone who is gregarious, outgoing, who has a story to share and who has some input, or if that's you and you'd like to be interviewed on this podcast, we would love to hear from you. So please go to the Venue RX, shoot us a DM and submit that person or yourself, and we will get you scheduled, because I think bringing together the community, and this is one of the things that we hope to do, bringing together the wedding community is very important to you and I. And, the more that we're able to get other vendors involved, I think that's a big win for us and for other people who are listening.
Yeah. Well, and everybody who's listening's likely got a story that we want to hear. So, and especially if it's you, but if you have someone you recommend as well, like we're down to hear and listen for sure. So
boom. All right. And with that, let's get into the show. So today, like I said in the beginning, we are going to be focusing on revenue streams and should you add them? Should you not add them? There's all sorts of different pros and cons. And before the show, Tim, you and I were chatting a little bit about, what streams to add if you are considering adding a different revenue stream to your wedding business. What are we actually talking about here, though, when we're talking about wedding additional streams for your wedding venue business? What practically are we talking about here?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And there's, like you said, there's a couple different ways to look at it. There are what you call value adds, where you're adding an additional service or a level of experience to your particular venue. And then you have actual uses of your venue. I think probably be the best way to summarize that, where you're deviating from a photo booth edition to actually asking an entirely different market to come use your location. So, office space, co-working space. I wouldn't recommend that right now, but something like that versus a photo booth. So I think there's multiple ways to look at it. And you and I definitely have some varying opinions on this subject, which I think is going to be great for our listeners.
Well, and I want to just go really quick and touch on co-working, because I think that's a wonderful.
Oh, we're just gonna dive right in. Okay.
Yeah, let's dive right in. I mean, we're here, we're doing it. So with co-working, I think that's very interesting that you brought that up right away. I don't have personal experience with that. Share a little bit of do you have experience with trying to partner up? Have you been into some conversations with co-working companies?
Yeah. And I really like the idea, and they do too. And here's the best part is, like, every idea sounds great at the very beginning until you really start to dig and get some more information out of it. And it's not to say that it's a bad idea, but there's a lot more complication to it than just saying, hey, come use our space.
We're digging today, Tim. We're digging. We're getting
in there. From having Wi-Fi to the coffee stations to your competition, and not to mention the pandemic at this point, but like, you need to have a lot of setup already done. And most venues have that feature. I know yours in particular, Jonathan, you already have the tables and the chairs and the solid Wi-Fi. So why not add this as a potential revenue stream? The conversations I've had have always been kind of like co-working spaces that wanted to have events in their venues, or kind of convert it. And that's where, as every venue owner knows, your venue is really kind of designed to have a flow to it, to accommodate weddings and the cadence and the structure of what a wedding is. Whereas co-working spaces, typically people come in, check in, and sit down. And so there's a lot less flow when it comes to a co-working space, but you have those extra amenities that some, people expect out of a co-working space, ample restrooms and drinking fountains and sodas and snacks and all that sorts of stuff. So lots of things to consider. I really like the idea if you can find a way to simplify it, and then not impede your existing events. And that's one of the things that we always I always struggled with is, well, are we going to offer co-working on Monday through Saturday or Monday through Thursday, and then just leave the weekends open? And then of course the hours, you have to be open and have your venue staffed when you have a co-working space. Whereas if you're just throwing parties, and you don't have to have somebody sitting there when nobody's there. So you wanted to dig. I mean, there's lots of thoughts about this. So,
well, and I was going to say that specifically is an interesting direction to take an additional revenue stream, just because fundamentally a venue has what a co-working space needs, which is the space, right? Yeah. You have all that space, and you have some of those amenities, to your point, bathrooms and Wi-Fi and different things, if your venue's already enabled like that. I'm excited about this topic because I think that there's a lot of outside the box thinking, which I really admire you, Tim, for. But there's a lot of outside the box thinking that can be done on this into using the space differently. So I'd like to unpack that first. And then let's go in and talk a little bit more about those value add things, maybe photo booths, bringing, some venues bring catering in-house, right? Yeah. I know you and I aren't maybe the biggest fans of that, but there are those all-inclusive venues that you come in and, it's $100 a head or $120 a head, and that's just their pricing model and how their margins are built in and everything else. Talk to me about ways that you have seen venue spaces currently, and even in this current pandemic environment, currently ways that venue spaces have been repurposed outside of a strict wedding venue.
Ooh, the number one comes to corporate events. Obviously, are the gravy if you can get those. And one of the things I would say is be cautious, because that's an entirely different market with an entirely different subset of requirements when you go that route. But one of the uses that I've seen is art walks. So if you are in a local business district, usually they have a Friday nights or a first Thursdays of the month where they just open up the block, the city block, and everybody's doors are open, and you just come in and visit the shops. And usually there's alcohol flowing and a lot of movement and environment. And this is obviously, again, pre-pandemic. But that was one of the uses that I really wanted to capitalize on, because it's fresh eyes. It's a very low bar to entry as well. Like, you can literally just open your doors, have one person sitting there, people come in and say hi and ask questions. A lot of it was really geared toward the art districts. Up in Seattle, I think it was a first Thursday in Pioneer Square, and all they did was open it up, and sometimes they'd feature an artist. And that's partnerships and collaborations that you can do there. But that was probably one of the most successful easiest to acquire opportunities with a very low barrier to entry.
I want to, before we go any deeper into this, I guess one of the other things that maybe for a prospective listener, they're thinking about how they should be approaching this. Are we strictly thinking about generating new revenue, or are we thinking about creating some awareness and some attention and maybe some marketing? Because, again, let's talk maybe pre-pandemic or even post-pandemic, on either side of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Should we just go straight for the jugular? Are we just trying to make the money, or are we trying to create local goodwill, those natural marketing opportunities? Like you said, with art walks, I mean, that's a lot of natural traffic. However, for a venue that is situated, maybe a ranch venue or a barn venue or something like that, that's not necessarily in a populated area with a lot of foot traffic, that's not going to be as possible. So are some of those events still possible?
I mean, art walks probably aren't if you're not in the central business district, but for people that have a smaller venue or are kind of out, away from the city, things that you can explore are mini concerts. If you have those relationships, you could have networking groups, work with your local insurance agent company, your local realtors. They always have network meetups, and that's a really good group of people to know because they know a lot of people. And to me, it's kind of one and the same. Whether you're going for the jugular and trying to get that dollar, or you're marketing, you're going for the jugular trying to get that dollar. So it's really kind of an opportunity for you to capitalize on. And I guess the biggest thing is don't spend money to try to minimize the amount of money you're spending to make more money. So try to get the best ROI or the return on your investment. And at this point, it would be time. So if you're going to spend 3 to 4 to 6 hours opening up your space for people to come visit, whether it's through a concert or an art walk or through a networking meeting, try not to spend too much money, because you want to get a good return on that. Mm-hmm. And then it's also about expanding your email list and your marketing lists to make sure that you can reach out to these people again and get your name out there even further. And that's really what it's, to me, is about on all of these opportunities. It's not trying to charge $10 at the door to come in. It's like, come visit us. Let me get your email address, because I'm going to take that $10 you would have paid me and convert it into thousands of dollars, with a venue rental. So that's where I would say, even post pandemic, there are opportunities that are coming. And here in Kansas City, they're allowed to gather up to 50 people. So that's kind of the cap. And if you are a bigger venue, you can accommodate that pretty easily with social distancing, and still have a stage and somebody performing. And you can make it a benefit concert, and have it. So there's all sorts of goodwill and ways, because you have the most crucial component, which is the space. Everybody needs the space. So there's just pretty much unlimited opportunity to explore, which I think kind of takes us into the next part of it at some point is, do you limit what you're going to do, or do you just explore every possible option out there? I think there's, it's a double-edged sword on both sides. But
and I think you bring up a good point. So I think there's a level of mindset here that we would be remiss if we didn't discuss. You've got to go into this discussion with yourself, with your business partner, with your spouse, if it's, a privately owned, even a backyard style, wedding venue. If you're listening to this right now and you have 10 acres, and you are, using part of it, you've got a barn, you have a, some sort of area that you've rented out. How do you take that and you convert it into a marketing opportunity where you're not spending a lot of money, but you are getting that awareness in a unique and creative way? And I feel like some of the most powerful marketing isn't necessarily direct, right?
Yeah.
It's that subtle product placement in movies. It's, just being the host of the party. You're familiar with Gary Vaynerchuk?
Oh, yeah.
And I'm sure many of our listeners are as well. So
if not, you should be, by all means.
Please, and go look this guy up.
Gary V. Yeah, absolutely.
Gary V. Yep. He has this whole high school party analogy. Have you heard it?
No, I'm excited.
Yes. Okay. I'm so excited about this because this is really, really true. And I have to say I used this in college without even knowing it. I grew up homeschooled, fun fact, and homeschooled all the way through college. So when I got to college, I didn't really necessarily have, and I didn't go to a 4-year right away. I went to a 2-year community college before transferring to a 4-year. And so I lived in this house with all these guys. And when you live in a house, it is there is a opportunity to host the parties. And so Gary Vee talks about a high school party. If you have the cool parents that are willing to let you have the high school party at your house, all of a sudden, if your social status, let's just say, is at a 2 or a 3, all of a sudden, because now you're willing to partner with maybe the more popular kids and host their parties because their parents are not going to let them. Now all of a sudden you're the host of the party. You are known as, the go-to person, and your social status gets elevated. But that happens naturally based on that act of service of extending the space. And that exact thing can happen if you're even hosting a podcast, right? If you're willing to let people host the podcast and say, hey, would you mention us to your podcast guests? If there's YouTube channel recordings or things like that. So, but again, let's go back to mindset, because I think there's so many things that we can do. And I think this, especially right now, there are plenty of vendors out there and venues that have just been really beat up.
Yeah.
And are listening to this, maybe, depending on when you're listening to this, pretty discouraged and, maybe not knowing the direction that you should go. But it's good, just take a deep breath and realize there are a lot of possibilities and opportunities. And just like you said, in Kansas City with 50 people, there are different ways that you can pivot and keep pushing forward. And so, if anything, feel encouraged about that. But let's go back to mindset. What are there some important things, some important steps that you would take before opening up your venue to every real estate network meeting, YouTube? We started throwing a lot of things out there, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, and I think that comes down to knowing your network and your market again, is exploring and going out and meeting people, because that's really what's going to change it. Is the right person is going to be the right connection, is going to open up this opportunity to this event. And that's what it's really about, is just connecting with other people. And
you have some practical, let's go practical. What is that? Are you just going down to Starbucks and trying to shake some hands? I guess we don't shake hands anymore. We give fist bumps.
It's elbow bumps.
Elbow bumps.
Actually reaching out and it sounds bad, but you're cold calling your network. And I would do LinkedIn and find people that are like-minded in the like industry, or even slightly different industries. Do a little bit of digging on them to see what they're up to, what they're passionate about, and try to connect with them. And if you can stick to a specific niche, like real estate agents or insurance agents or whatever it is, those are just two of the ones that are most prominent. You might find that you are the go-to venue for real estate networking meetings. And if every realtor is coming to your space over and over again, and you have to find the right person. And that's one of the questions I always ask when I'm meeting somebody is, you are awesome to meet, and I really enjoyed our conversation. Do you have someone else that you think I should meet and network with? Do you have someone that could benefit from the conversation and knowing me, and maybe I can help them in another way or something like that? So just kind of like going above and beyond just the traditional, hi, I'm Tim, I'm a venue owner, it's nice to meet you. It's like, be passionate about, serving that person, helping that person, and then asking them. You have to ask, is there anything else I can do to help you? And is there anybody else that you would recommend I connect with?
That's so important.
Yeah.
Tim, I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I feel like a lot of times our conversations end at what the interaction can be between the two people who are talking.
Yeah.
It's like, Tim, what can you do for me? Are we going to do business together? Is there a relationship? I think even romantically, a lot of times as guys or gals, we're looking for that other person to satisfy whatever we're looking for, right?
Oh, yeah.
When in fact, they could be the gateway. They could be the key holder, right? To open that lock somewhere else, whether that's, like I said, a romantic relationship, a business relationship, any sort of opportunity. If you come into it with a mindset of like, hey, what do you have for me? Versus, hey, this is what I'm looking for. Is this something you're willing to tackle, or would you know someone who I'm able to serve in this way, or someone who'd be interested in this opportunity? So I love that you said that. Thank you so much.
You got to be honest. We're selfish, we're humans, and it's always about what survival techniques and tactics. So you're going to be selfish, and you're going to want to meet somebody, and you have a purpose behind it. But if you can shift your mindset and actually care and listen, and then go out there and try to find someone else that you can care and help, that's going to go 10 times faster than, hey, can you bring your group to my venue and have a party?
Mhm.
It's like that doesn't do anything. They're like, well, why am I helping you? So I think that's one way to go about it. But before we get too further, Jonathan, you literally have this right now. With one of your venues, it's a church, a gathering of people. So can you talk about that experience? And do you feel like that is one opportunity that venues can explore, because churches need places to congregate? And if you have an open space, like what's your experience in with that?
Definitely. So there is so much here to unpack. I'm glad you asked. Um, I've really learned a lot in the past couple months as we've been working through this, because it is the space that we have is shared by a church group. So the hypothetical scenario that was discussed is a Monday through Thursday use of the space as a church and community venue, and then the rest of it, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, would be a wedding venue. And what we've found is there's a lot of rub at different points between the two different motivations. The church group wanting to use it to further their mission in the community, and it is a Christian church. So, as they pursue their faith, as they pursue, the gospel, impacting people and changing people's lives, Monday through Thursday, through concerts, through prayer groups, through gatherings, the discussion has been, okay, how are we going to view this? And so I think that's why the mindset is so important, because if you're not totally clear on who your bride or groom is, if you're not clear on who the couple is that you're going to be serving, it's very easy to send out incorrect marketing baits, even at mass gatherings of people. And we've had some groups of people come in where it would be a perfect marketing opportunity, but it's just not going to be our target market. Case in point, a group of children. If there's a big event for a group of kids, there's going to be no lead generation there, or limited lead generation, if there's parents or whatever who are coming. So it's important to make sure that kind of what you're trying to do. Is it purely altruistic? Is there a goal there of trying to build in some value to demonstrate how the space can be used for other people who could be paying clients? One of the things that we've learned very, very quickly is that it's really important to set your boundaries for these different types of events up front, and always make sure that you charge even a little bit. And I say this, and I would really encourage people to consider this. And this is something that I think we struggle with, and I think specifically because it's a church space. But I'm glad we can talk about this, because there's plenty of different spaces like this out there in existence that I know may struggle with this concept. The church side of it, who is the ownership, they are the property owners. They are saying, well, this is church property. Like we don't charge for this. We don't. This is a gift to the community. And my thing is, yes, absolutely, it can be a gift. We can undervalue it. We can discount it, but we need to make sure that we understand our value, because anyone who comes into this space expects excellence, regardless of if it's $500 or $5,000. And so understanding what you're offering, understanding, how much it's going to cost to provide the type of experience you want to cost. You're not serving anyone by undervaluing yourself.
No, absolutely. And you're going to be fighting an uphill battle at that point too. So, and I think what we actually just I figured out is you are in a partnership, and this is definitely a diversified income stream opportunity, is to find someone that you can partner with and put them on the onus. Okay, you get Monday through Thursday, I'll take Friday through Sunday. And you become, quote unquote, the landlord. So it's like, here's your opportunity. So that right there is like kind of a home run to me, is finding someone else that you can trust and work with, and get all these conversations out there up front and say, all right, if you're a promoter and this is what you do, you need a space, but you can't afford or don't have the background to go out and get a venue. Why don't we work together? I won't step on your toes. You won't step on my toes. The thing that I would, caution is, when you share a space with somebody, there are a level of expectations that they want, and that what they need to be able to be successful. And then you have a level of expectations. So you can't be, well, I have a wedding that wants to get booked on Tuesday, so I need the space from you. Like, that's got to be a two-way street, where it's like, I'm going to pay you for my space.
Mm-hmm.
And, they're going to get their revenue because they're giving up a day. So there's like all sorts of ways you can go about it.
Well, and Tim, I should at this point give a huge shout out to the ownership of the venue that we're currently at right now with this thing, Matt and Amy. And I know, and I hope at some point that both of you will be listening to this, but I just want to say the level of communication that we've been able to have back and forth is incredible. And it's so important because, Tim, to your point, whether you're working with a promoter, whoever you're working with, you have got to make sure that the communication's on point, that there's mutual respect, that there's a level of trust there. Because when you're sharing a space like that and, setup needs to happen here or there, or, maybe something is not clean for the next day when there's an important event, though those conversations are sometimes difficult to have, but they're so important to have, and to just be transparent and use a lot of candor when you're having those discussions. And so I'm really thankful to both Matt and Amy, because it has been that struggle at times where, we've wanted to have a rehearsal on a Thursday. There's a prayer group or a little worship meeting or something happening on that Thursday, and the bride's not able to get that. And that causes some friction in our relationship with the bride. So how do you handle that? And how do you, what are those guidelines? So I think it's never going to be completely cut and dried as much as we'd like to plan it out and use a spreadsheet and whatever else. You've got to have those lines of communication open. So, to your point,
you said, you have had nothing but amazing things to say about Matt and Amy. And I think that is a huge dynamic that you have to have figured out when you go into some sort of partnership like that. And I think, kudos to all three of you guys, because you have been able to do that. And I know through our conversations, on the side, you've always said, like, it's been very easy to have these conversations with them, even though they're tough conversations. It's not something you go and beat around the bush, and you are very candid about it. Like, this is an issue. How do we solve this? And so I know we're kind of,
well, we've diverted a little bit, but I think it's a really good point, because, we're talking about diversifying the income streams of your venue. And so if you're going to develop a partnership with someone who has credibility or capability in a specific area, just making sure you have those conversations with them up front, and remembering it is a relationship, and it's important to be able to have that dialogue with them on an ongoing basis. And so I would say spending more time up front with someone is going to save you a lot of headache on the back end. And just to make sure, even with a simple one-page document, just to outline what happens when, can be really, really helpful. Even if it's not something crazy that's looked over by lawyers or whatever, if there's just an expectation sheet that's laid out that, this is what you get from this time to this time, this is what I get from here to here, that can be an extremely powerful way to open yourself up to not only new revenue, but new organic marketing and lead gen and all sorts of different really cool things.
Well, that document doesn't have to be set in stone. It just has to be an agreement between you, because it'd be like, I know that I'm not supposed to have this space on Tuesday, but if you're not using it, are you open to having this conversation? And that's really what it is a clarity point to go back and say, hey, listen, you either violated this, or I want to, quote unquote, violate this, and with your permission, move forward in that perspective. So I think that's probably one of the best ways to expand your revenue streams, is diversify and share your space, if you have the right person and the right partner to do that. And I would definitely set a time limit. Let's try this out for 3 months, see if we can make it work. Obviously, with weddings, you need more than 12 months probably to book your space out that far. But again, at that point, you have that entire time frame to book out your space beforehand. Mm-hmm. So I think there's probably, in my opinion, one of the best revenue streams you can add is some sort of partnership with somebody. Mm-hmm. Let them take on the onus of booking your space, and then everybody wins at that point.
Mm-hmm. Something I wanted to add to this is also understanding the expectations of the people who are going to be coming into the space, and what type of lead you're going to get. And so one of the things that we've seen is specifically working with the church community that may be friends, family, connections, extended network, folks who are members or friends of members of this church. There is a level of familiarity with the venue already. And so if someone is looking to book there, they likely have a pre-existing relationship with Matt and Amy at the space, right? Or pre-existing relationship with there. So depending on your position, if you are the venue owner and now you're bringing in someone else, understanding that other person that you're bringing in does have their circle. They do have their
Mhm.
group. And whether that's a real estate group or a Toastmasters group even, or something like that, they have people in their network who are going to come to the property or come to that group with a certain level of familiarity, and they're going to maybe expect deals, or there's
Yeah.
going to be expectations that are not necessarily spoken or verbalized. And that's something we've certainly encountered. Being on the other side of it, we have a management agreement with this venue, so we're on the other side of the spectrum, and there is existing relationships. This group has been around for 30 years. I mean, there are some very deep, very solid connections and even generational connections that happen. And so now all of a sudden someone comes along and you're saying, "Oh, I want to charge you $8,000 for a wedding." It's like, I grew up here. I
Yeah.
was 7 sitting over there. It's going to be $8,000 and the arch is going to be an extra 200. What,
Right.
you know, some hurt feelings, some phone calls. So the communication is so important. It could sound like a mess, but really, if you're just willing to do a little bit of extra work, I think it can pay huge dividends. And just making sure that you're clearly defining what you can and can't provide, and you're understanding what the lead is going to look like that comes in from the partnership that you're making.
Yeah.
Real estate leads are going to look a little bit different, like I said, than if you're partnering up with first responders, fire, police, for their events. The leads from that is going to look a little bit different if you partner with legal groups for spaces for depositions, right? Like, there's a bunch of different things that you can do. But
Well, and I think that kind of segues into the next idea is, instead of creating an actual partnership, just create relationships with other people who put on events. Your coordinator is one that puts on a ton of events, and they know baby showers and what's the, not bachelorette parties, but what's the one before the wedding? I'm drawing a blank right
bridal
now.
shower.
Yeah, bridal showers. And there's all sorts of opportunities to explore there and say, hey, I'll give you the space for $500 and you can charge whatever you want because it's a Tuesday and I don't really care. I just want the $500. Then you don't have to worry about that monetary exchange or trying to sell to, a bridal shower or something like that, or a baby shower even. So I think there's different ways to explore the partnership, quote unquote, whether it's through just you try to book the space and I pay you, or you get to charge whatever you want and you pay me. There's different ways to go about it, and it could vary from person to person too. So.
Well, and here's a perfect place for a plug. If you haven't listened to episode 2, I would recommend that you, at some point when you're done listening to this, go back and listen to the discussion that we had on pricing in episode 2, because knowing your costs, knowing how much you need to be making from the venue on any given day, and knowing how much, like, is a Tuesday, does it make sense for you to lease or rent or sublease your venue space out on a Tuesday for $500 or $1,000, or do you need to be charging $1,200? How are you set up? What does your overhead look like? What do your costs look like? How much does your staffing cost? What are your utilities? We cover all those things in episode 2, so go check that one out. After you're done with this one, of course. Let's pivot though, Tim, because we've spent a little bit talking about ways that you can take your space, develop a partnership, repurpose and reutilize the space, whether it's co-working, whether it's additional meetings. We were talking about podcasts, YouTube things. There's all sorts of different creative spaces where people who maybe need a creator space, who don't have that space, can utilize midweek. And I think that's super, super powerful. Let's change gears here though. Let's talk about how, when you're an existing venue, let's say that you are even currently or post-pandemic, we hope you're doing good currently, but if you're not, and you're kind of struggling and you're trying to revitalize your business, you can use some of the tips we just talked about. But moving forward, let's say that you do have, your Saturdays in 2021 are super booked out now, right? 2022 is probably picking up some bookings as well. If you're in that space and you're just looking to increase the revenue that you're making per wedding, so maybe you can make up for some of the lost revenue in 2020 here. Let's talk about some strategies there. What have you seen work, whether it's for an all-inclusive venue or a blank canvas?
Ooh.
Big question.
That's a beautiful question, because like you said, and I've said it to you, is 2021 is going to be an incredible year for every venue, just because everybody you pushed from 2020 to 2021 is going to have their event. So we do need to start thinking of ways to eke out a couple more dollars to make up for what we lost in 2020. So, again, I would say partnerships, bringing in a photo booth company. If you don't have a photo booth, and saying, hey, can I get 10% for everybody that I push, and I'll push it out to my entire group. Kind of your epic vendor list, or your, not your epic vendor, your vendor list.
Let me interrupt you really quick. I want to ask a question though. Would you recommend partnering or doing it yourself? And what questions would you ask to determine that?
I like the outsourcing idea. I like, having someone who's an expert and a professional and is already established and has figured out all the nuances and the challenges. I think there's, you're going to leave some money on the table, but you're also going to leave all that stress out there, and you're not going to have to deal with buying a photo booth and figuring it out and manning it if it doesn't work, and the labor that comes. So there's, like I said, with every revenue stream you add, there's going to be a level of complexity. And so if that to me is dependent on you as the venue owner, like how much time and effort and energy do you have to explore this new revenue stream? Catering, you obviously aren't going to be the one that can cook and then plate and then serve. You're going to have to hire a staff. And if you partner with a caterer, say, hey, Mr. Caterer or Mrs. Caterer, I'm going to push your catering business on all my 2021 clients. We're going to have a special promotion. Are you willing to give me 5%, 10% of whatever they book? There's dessert carts, dessert trucks. And you do, what was the one that was my favorite? The cinnamon sticks. Gosh, my wife's
churros.
So what? Churros. If they're going to come at the end of the night, all right, churro truck, I'm going to have you come to all my events. How long have you been in
Kansas now? Because you can't be forgetting about churros. You lived in San Diego.
We had pozole yesterday. It was phenomenal. So if you know pozole, my wife cooked it for the first time. Absolutely delicious. I actually put it on some of my eggs this morning. It was that good. So
now I'm hungry. Thanks. I said, now I'm hungry. Thanks.
Yeah. Well, I got some pozole left over if you want some.
All right. I'll book a flight.
But I mean, those are opportunities that you can explore with every vendor. And I would start there. Just especially if you have a good relationship with one or the other, say, hey, I'm struggling, you're struggling. Is there something we can do to collaborate and we can create a win for both of us? Because I guarantee you, if you have 52 Saturdays booked for 2021, and your local caterer or your local photographer, your local florist is struggling to have these events, and they are, hey, what if we pushed your service and, we offered a special promotion? Are you willing to work with me? Because I obviously need to increase my revenue a little bit. Don't want to take away from you too much, but is there a value add or a collaboration that we can create for our clients that becomes a win-win-win for all three parties? There are some creative things, like I said, talking to your after party vendor trucks, food trucks. I'm just really struggling today with some words, so I apologize. But what do you think, Jonathan? I mean,
words are hard. Words are hard.
What are some of your thoughts on ways to increase this revenue post pandemic?
I think it's really important to understand yourself and have a good level of self-awareness to figure out, is this something that I want to take on? And going back, I really like if we can, doing it in-house. Sure, there's the added maintenance, there's the added cost. You have to amortize the cost of equipment or maintenance over time. And if you're unsuccessful and if it doesn't work, that's a potential loss that you have. So it definitely does get a little bit more complicated if you are doing it in-house. But I guess you have to understand yourself. And what I know about myself is I like starting new things, new businesses. There's a sense of energy and kind of creation and newness there. And so if you're like me, I would encourage you to understand yourself and think about what you like doing. And maybe you have no business adding photo bus stuff on, but you should be doing alcohol in-house, or you should be doing the staffing component, or you should be doing, developing more of a closed catering list or whatever. Depending on who you are, you should adapt that to what things that you plan on offering in-house. If you're just amazing with cars and you love tinkering with vintage cars, making a little vintage car with a tap handle on the side of it, or a retrofitted VW bus, like we've seen with some of the photo booths that have happened, or
a photo op. Set it up for a photo op. Talk to your clients. Hey, I've got these vintage cars. do you want me to set it out front and you guys can take pictures? $200, $300, I'll
And
bring
it's
it
a
here.
huge value add, but
Yeah.
you're taking who you are as a person, and that's going to shine through, and you're going to really get clients that really appreciate you, and you're going to love doing it. It's not going to be painful. If you absolutely hate photography and you're not a tech person at all, and you're trying to set this thing up and the batteries aren't working and the program is not working and you're going to get so drained. So I would say do a personal evaluation, and then just do some research, understanding where are the profit margins higher? Does it make sense to do a photo booth? Does it make sense to do the alcohol? Are there zoning restrictions? Are there liquor license restrictions? So I would kind of go through that process, understand yourself, then look at what is the highest profit margin. So by process of elimination, you'll end up getting to what you should be doing, maybe. And that can be different for each one. On the venue, on the partnership side of things, I even hesitate getting into this a little bit because I feel like this is a full other episode that we need to talk about. How do you develop those relationships with vendors? How do you create those partnerships? And what do you do when there are multiple relationships? Because for every venue, there's like 4 catering companies.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or 5 catering companies. So how do you go about selecting a partner for this? Obviously you can start with if they call you back from a very basic standpoint. But, how do you go about understanding who to partner with, how to partner, the revenue split, some of those things. So I think we're going to have to create an episode on that. And if you're listening, like we said in the beginning, go to the Venue RX Instagram, or if you're watching this on YouTube, let us know in the comments, like what things have you seen work? What add-ons have you seen work at venues? And would you, most importantly, I think, would you do it in-house or would you do that partnership? Because that's you have to kind of decide that very early on so that you're not bringing in the relationship and then kicking them out after 3 or 4 months and copying them. That's not that won't breed a lot of goodwill with your vendor team.
They'll damage you in the industry very, very quickly. And I mean, unless you're very upfront about it, like, hey, I just want to try this for 3 months and we may explore it on our own. I mean, if you have those conversations up front, and that comes down to the dialogue, and I think there's going to be a lot of it. Because they're going to have their wants and needs. You're going to have your wants and needs. And it's going to have to, we're going to try this and we're going to see if it works. And I would always put some sort of testing period on there that, if it doesn't work, you haven't lost that much, either side, and make it somewhat mutual. And so it is dangerous when you bring other people in to some extent, but I would start with the people you're most comfortable with, who you've known the longest, or you've worked with several times and just really click. I think that's incredibly important. And I think one of the other probably easiest revenue streams you can add is some level of coordination or event planning or something. If you partner up with a coordinator, then you're kind of limited in that regard. But as a venue owner, you were likely there from the very beginning to the very end anyway. So you are going to be part of the planning or the coordination of the day. Is there a packet that you can create, or timelines, or typical do's and don'ts, or something that you can add value to your client? Say, hey, for $500, we'll bring in a second body and they're going to help, make sure your dress is ready before you walk down the aisle, or, make sure that there's water being poured for all your guests, like just an extra person. And to me, that adds a significant amount of value with a very low cost to you, typically. And it's pretty streamlined with what you're doing already. Which I think is kind of a fast track to adding some revenue. Now, if you're already offering coordination or it's already part of your package, then you're kind of limited there. But you'll start to see, and as you brainstorm, hopefully you're getting some inspiration and ideas of, oh, if I did this, or I added this value, or I brought in this person, can I charge more? Do my clients even want it? And then I would test it. I would test it with 1 or 2 or 3 clients through a conversation, because it's very likely you're not going to have it dialed into a T before you have the conversation, and they're going to bring up challenges and questions that you're like, oh shit, I never even thought about that. And so, some of the questions we got is, oh, so you're going to have somebody there on the day of, what are they going to wear? It's like, oh yeah, that is important.
That's an important question. Yeah.
What is security? You bring in security at night. Are they armed? Are they there to kick people out? And it's like, so these questions are going to come up as you have these conversations with your customers. And if you have a relationship with, hopefully you do, with your clients, that you can have these conversations and be very candid. Like, hey, we're thinking about doing this. what are your thoughts on it? And they're like, well, what if this? That'll help percolate and give you some more ideas to go off of
I
that.
think there's a big awareness of actual versus perceived value, because we're talking about building in value, but I guess the value is to who? As wedding professionals, as wedding vendors, if you're listening to this right now, you know that there are all sorts of extremely invaluable things that you wish you could communicate to every single client. And, I think a lot of different wedding or even business gurus would talk about, knowing who your client is and, educating the client and, bringing awareness to certain points that they may not be aware of coming into a wedding or coming into an event. That is totally true, but really thinking about it empathetically and understanding where is the perceived value for them. Because there could be a huge difference between something that has a lot of perceived value and you're able to build in a lot of additional revenue possibilities, where the actual value, the cost for bringing that in is not that high. And like you said, to your point with the coordination, that's definitely a good one. I think every different venue will have unique things. So it's important to have some of that creative time. And we talked in episode 2 about, kind of at the end, I believe we were talking about being willing to invest back into yourself, read books, things like that, understanding the actual perceived value, thinking in your client's shoes from your client's viewpoint and understanding, do they need coordination, or will they be scratching their head wondering, why the heck would I need coordination, while you're there going, coordination really help me because it'll help make sure they start on time, end on time, and there's not a bunch of trash left over afterwards. So
well,
really,
you're solving their problem. I mean, there's value adds, and then can you solve another problem that they, number one, didn't know they had, or number two, that they do know, and you're like, well, I can partner up, or we can create this all inclusive. So you're absolutely right. Is the perceived notion of, I know this is incredibly valuable. I know I can do this, and I know this is going to help me in 10 million ways, and it's going to help you in 5 or 6. Yeah, dude, that was brilliant. I like that.
Cool. All right, well, let's move to the next and kind of the tail end section of our episode here. We like to do questions, and specifically when we bring guests on, we're really excited to ask them some quick kind of hot take type questions. We've called it the lightning round, the fire round. There's all sorts of different names for it. We are going to come up with a defined name, Tim, and we're only on episode 3 here, so I'm not too worried about it. We'll come up with something catchy. If you have a suggestion for us, hit us with it, because we love it, and we know that our community here is very creative, and so we'd love to hear your suggestions. But wind down. What was it? The
post-wedding wind down.
Post-wedding wind down. So, I mean, we could do that. But we do have a couple of questions. And so, Tim, let's go ahead. We'll ping pong a couple of these questions back and forth. Huh? I'm going to have you go ahead, start asking me the question. We'll go through 2 of these. And then I want to ask you a question at the end, a business, book, or podcast, let's say, other than this one, that has really, really impacted you positively from a mindset perspective, maybe from a work-life balance perspective. I actually have one in my head already that directly relates to what we were just talking about. So maybe I have an unfair advantage asking this question.
You're asking questions that you already know the answer to. That's awesome. Yeah,
I know, right? Right. Hey, I can play that game. I'm down.
I'm here for that. Kinds of questions.
Cool. So I'm going to have you start. Let's just pull 2 of those fast questions, and then we'll move along to that resource tip at the end.
Yeah. So based on, kind of our background conversations, you're going ham right now. Like you're going hard, and you're going really hard right now, which is impressive and awesome. What is your inspiration or your motivation to continue doing that?
That's a great question. And you actually asked a similar question yesterday.
Did I?
And I answered freedom. But you're asking in a little bit of a different way.
Sorry.
And I think that's important because the inspiration is not always connected exactly to the motivation.
Yeah.
Right. And I like to think of inspiration more as maybe long range and with a lot more breadth. And the motivation is definitely more practical. It's more pragmatic. It's more what's right in front of you. And for me, I have a lot of goals that I really want to accomplish. And I often find myself starting projects and not finishing them.
Mhm.
And I often find myself, dreaming really big, but not doing the work, the hard work in some cases, the really annoying, administratively driven, whatever work that's just a total bummer, but that you have to get done in order to succeed and get to the next level. And so, we were doing roughly $1 million a year in our staffing company prior to the pandemic. I not only want to get back there, but I want to break into a new category. I really want to be consistently making over $2 million of revenue a year. And I have some of those goals. And so my motivation, what kind of keeps me driving, is a very, very visceral, tangible goal that I have of wanting to hit the $2 to $4 million mark in revenue that we're able to do, because I really believe that's going to push our business to the next level. And I want to increase payroll. I want to, be able to give more to my employees. They work so hard. I want to be able to expand their roles. I want to continue growing the team. And so from a very straightforward, visceral, practical standpoint, my motivation is, and why I'm hustling so hard. And I mean, it's we started this around 4:30 a.m. or something like that here. And the day is going to be full, but I love it that way. And I want it that way because I'm motivated to hit those goals. And those are practical, tangible goals that I have. And I'm looking to accomplish them in the next 12 months. And I know that I have to take action on those now. So that for me is a big driving force outside of just wanting freedom, financial freedom, schedule freedom, things that are more directly related to being an entrepreneur.
Awesome. Thanks for re-answering my question totally differently. I like that. It was awesome.
You
actually there. Appreciate it.
Answered it. I'm just plugging episode 2 is what I'm doing. Listen, if you're listening to this or watching this, you got to go listen to episode 2.
There's good content and all of this stuff. No,
pricing.
Absolutely.
You got to know. We talk about the money. Okay.
Are you asking me now? What?
I sure am. So I've got, Tim, I'm excited about this question because I know you've got some juicy, just awesomeness for us. We've talked about bridezillas, momzillas, friendzillas, just zillas, right? Yeah. What is a Zilla moment for you in the 10 plus years that you've been involved in this industry? Give us the juice, give us the nasty bits, give us the details. Let me know.
Easy. Well, I'm not going to name names, but what I'm saying, if that person's listening, they might know. So it was when I was a photographer, back in the photography days, you get all sorts of experiences out there. And we had just photographed this couple, and we thought we crushed it. Like we did a great job, and we delivered some really quality photos, lots of depth and artistic value and everything. And we just absolutely loved the session. Sent it to her and him, and they're like, well, yeah, these are good. We're like, okay, great. Nothing crazy, not bad. They're good. They weren't disappointed. Then we photographed the wedding. Then everything turns into a disaster. When they get the photos back, the first thing was, you didn't take enough photos of the centerpieces. And if you know centerpieces, like they're important, but they're not the most important part of the day. But we were sure to capture every, varying centerpiece. And there was I think 3. The problem was that they had spent a lot of time and effort the night before creating these, and they wanted all sorts of artistic, funky, different, probably I think we've had 15 photos for 3 different types of centerpieces. And that's a lot. That's 15, lot for
15 for each, or was this 5 for each?
5 for each, 5 different angles, perspectives,
that's a lot.
The rings.
I mean,
that was a lot. That wasn't what set it off. What set it off, and I remember this, was you didn't fix my nasolabial folds. I had to literally look up what nasolabial folds are, and what they are. And if you can see us on YouTube, is when you smile, you have these lines right here. She wanted us to go back and Photoshop out of every single picture where she smiled her nasolabial folds.
Nasolabial, guys, this is the word, this is the phrase of the day right here. Nasolabial fold. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
It shocked me, and I was just like, that's your smile. Like, what do you? And she wanted her money back, and I was like, listen, I can't make you not smile. And so it just went on from there. And there was pictures where, as a photographer, you have depth of field. So the background's bokeh and the foreground's, in focus. And then we sent her that. She's like, we don't like that. I'm like, lady, this is what we do is we give you contrast and dynamic photos. If you don't, I can shoot everything at f8 and everything's going to be flat, but we thought you hired us for some creativity. So it just ended up from, lots of discussions, and nasolabial folds is kind of our go-to laugh, my wife and I.
Did you end up giving her the money back over the nasolabial folds?
No, I couldn't justify it. And I'm one to give money back. Like,
yeah, totally.
But I was just like, there was literally nothing I could have done. And you didn't mention this before. So like, I can't go back and redo it. And honestly, the photos look great and everybody else is complimenting you on your photos on Facebook and social media. So I think you're just a little self-conscious. I didn't say this obviously, but
totally. Imagine that Yelp review coming in, Tim Wirik and co, he just photographed me, but my nasolabial folds were just fucked up.
Yeah. And everybody's gonna be like, what the fuck is a nasolabial fold? And so you're gonna see a spike in the Google searches. Yeah.
Yep.
No, it was crazy. So that's one of the moments that my wife and I remember very vividly. So
cool.
Not as crazy as some of the other stories I'm sure you've heard.
No, we'll have to do a crazy moment. We should do like a crazy moment. Because I know, and we should ask for submissions is what we should do, because I know that our vendor community has some wild stories out there. No
names, but the raunchiest stories you got.
Yeah, all the stories. We need that. That's the juice. That's the part. That's the part of
our Saturday morning podcast, just going through all of these stories and the best one we'll have on the show and they can talk about it in detail. That'd be awesome.
Let's do it. Yeah. Cool. Look at that, just brainstorming. We're our creative juices are flowing. I love it. I know.
So thank you for the inspiration, motivation. What's one wedding trend that you would like to see either come back around or start?
Come back around or start. How about stop?
Okay. Yeah. Totally fair. I like it.
Oh man. A trend. It's weird. I don't really consider myself a trendy guy, so I don't know if my discussion on trends is going to be as on point as I know so many others would. But one thing that I would really like to see is more venues be blank canvas. I think the trend towards having venues, and to our point of adding revenue streams, having venues bring as much in-house because they're trying to squeeze every dollar out of the actual event, is stifling the creativity of the industry. And I think in equal parts, understanding how you don't go totally crazy having a bunch of random vendors in all the time that are just completely wreaking havoc on your venue. But at the same time, something that I would really like to see, and I know there's been a strong effort, obviously, Tim, with the projects that you've been involved on, and an incredible nationwide company that you've been instrumental in building. And then in the venues that I've built, we're building these blank canvas spaces, but I'd really like to see more venues go in that direction because it leaves room for creativity. It leaves room for incredibly talented people to do what they do best. And, it leaves that room. And so I would encourage, I guess the trend that I would love to see is more venues be open to bringing in outside vendors and developing systems of weeding through vendors to really let the talented folks in catering, whether it's chefs, whether it's catering companies, photo booths, whether it's like let experts be experts. Dive into your craft as a venue owner, understand your costs, understand your venue, understand how to make your venue the most aesthetically pleasing as possible, which is huge. That's what we're here to do. We're here to provide a beautiful area for people to get married at or hold their event at. And so I would love to see more blank canvas venues and more of an inertia, more than I think we're already seeing, towards that model rather than doing the in-house model.
I like that one. I like that one a lot.
We can get aligned on that one.
I think we can. Like I think we can.
Yep.
If I can talk you out of rentals, then I think we can get aligned.
Oh, absolutely. Oh. Yeah. Okay. So Tim, I want to throw something back at you, the inspiration question, because you've asked me that question, but I'm curious about you, and we've just been getting to know each other. And if you're listening to this podcast, you're going to hear more of our story, how Tim and I met and all of that. And we've kind of shared that a little bit in episode 1. So go back and maybe listen to that one. But what inspires you? And you could handle the inspiration and motivation question if you wanted. But what wakes you up in the morning? What is your point of this that you're
kids
just
wake me up in the morning. No, I'm just kidding.
and if you have kids, that does happen. We didn't think that would happen, but yeah.
No, that's awesome. So I would start with,
I've always been, let's
that's
go.
That's a Tim sigh. Yeah.
That's
a deep thought happening right there.
I love it.
I would say fear in combination with, being a little bit of a rebel. I've always hedged my downside as much as humanly possible. And the way I've done that is by building other opportunities and systems. And so, that has honestly been our saving grace, to have these plans and these contingencies for what needs to be done in case things go wrong. And that's a motivating driver is not to have that fear of, lost income or, loss of my arm, just working out and exercising. And it's a very powerful driver, but it's also a double-edged sword because you don't want it to be the only driver, because that just gets to be unhealthy. I would also say being kind of a rebel is, wanting to disrupt and change. And I've always felt like when I'm doing something, I was like, there's got to be a better way to do this. There just has to be, like, why am I wasting my time doing it this way? And finding how static and lethargic and comfortable businesses and industries can become, which is a great place to be, I guess, at some point, but things are going to change. So you kind of have to prepare yourself, because I'm going to come along and be like, just because you do it that way doesn't mean that it should be done that way. So finding ways to challenge the status quo and improve things has always been kind of a driver for me. And then the last one is I just love to build. I love to build things. I love Legos, like we talked about on the last episode. I love building, drawing and creating. And so being able to take that passion that I have, and turn it into building businesses and companies and opportunities for other people to work and create and inspire. And that was the Blank Canvas thing, is, it creates opportunities for other vendors to be successful. I'll give a shout out to Christina Cadden. She started CC Vintage Rentals out in San Diego. And the only way she was able to survive was through our venue. She told me this, I'm pretty sure. She was like, without Brick being here, we wouldn't have had a business, because you got us off the ground, you got us running, you gave us the opportunity with the open houses, and that's what helped us segue into the industry and become a brand. And then she ended up selling her company. So it was like a huge win for her. And that was very inspiring for me. Is like, wow, we created this opportunity for this other couple and employees, and, just by not doing rentals. Sorry. No, but
we're gonna have to talk about this, because this.
Well, and photographers too. We started Brick as a photography studio, but we didn't want to be the required photography vendor, so we wanted to create opportunities for other photographers. So I love to build. I love to hedge my downside, and I love to kind of rebel. So those are some of my passions. And
Tim, you're describing the traits of a purebred entrepreneur. I think. There's the rebel component in there that's wanting to build. But, something that you said there was very interesting. And I think the business owners who are listening to this right now will relate to this. But other people who are not entrepreneurs or who are not business owners, I think that starting a business, they may think that starting a business is a very risky thing. You could fail. You could have a product or service that doesn't hit the market well. There's all sorts of risk involved. In fact, it's far more risky. What I grew up hearing was it's far more risky to start your own business rather than to go, get a good job after getting a wonderful degree that's going to have job stability, 401k, and there's kind of a path to life. And when you have that good job, you have the security. But it's interesting though, because your big thing was developing other security blankets.
Yeah.
And you basically said you're very risk adverse. And I would argue that entrepreneurs are actually extremely risk adverse. Sure, we're willing to make that big jump, that one big risk maybe of betting on ourselves. But at the end of the day, we're risk adverse as hell. We're trying to develop different ways. I mean, just today, we're talking about how to diversify revenue streams for your venue. I mean, that's one of the most risk adverse things you can do. And so I love that. That's really cool. I'm thankful for you and for this podcast. And it's definitely been an inspiration and encouragement to me as I've been on my journey. And especially being in this industry. I mean, I think we're one of the hospitality industry, tourism is one of the most impacted industries right now, I think, in the world. Yeah. And, the changes at a very, very foundational level that are happening in our industry are extremely real. And so, as a listener, as a viewer on YouTube, we really appreciate you following along with us and, being part of this community, because our passion and our mission here really is to not just be on the forefront of redefining our industry and rebuilding our industry, but, we want to facilitate collaboration. We want to encourage you to lead the other people that are in your circle and your market. And, we want to give you those tools and tips and things that we've learned and ways that we can help you. And so if you have a way that we can help you, if you have some questions about running your venue or running your wedding related business, Tim has a plethora of experience with photography. I've got experience with staffing and managing people. So there's a lot of value that we'd like to provide, and just very humbly, because we know there's so many people that have helped both of us along our journey. So thank you for being a listener. We really appreciate it. And as a call to action, again, we got to build this Instagram. We got to build this Instagram community. So if you are on Instagram, absolutely, go to the Venue RX podcast, give us a follow, like all of our one photos.
Soon to be two.
But we're going to put two on there. We're going to put Tim's face. We're going to put my face.
Thank you.
We're going to
I don't
get.
know if that's going to get us more followers or not. But.
I know. I don't know. Maybe. Well, fingers crossed. But anyway, go to our profile, follow it, and follow along. Subscribe wherever you're listening to podcasts, whether that's Apple Music, Spotify, and on YouTube. Hit us in the comments, because the comments are where we get to interact with you. We are super on top of it, and we really want to know some of the questions that you have, the feedback you have. Talk shit on our hair. Let us know. Tim is a photographer. Tell him that his lighting is crappy, or his dynamic range is off. You know what I mean? Like,
absolutely. I'm down for that. I can take
all right. All righty, guys. That is episode number 3. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Make sure to subscribe and follow along wherever you listen to podcasts as we delve into the wild world of weddings.